guys, welcome back to my channel. Sure, living in New York City comes with some downsides like delayed and packed subways, having to share the streets with Pizza Rat, and I guess now with Bagel Rat. That being said, living in the city also gives me access to some amazing and fun bookish opportunities, like getting to attend a screening of The Housemaid. I got a chance to watch the movie early with my friend on Friday night, and I spent half of my subway ride home admiring my movie tie-in book that I got as a gift, and also furiously typing my thoughts into my notes app because I didn't want to forget anything when I sat down to film this review for you guys. I filmed a book deep dive where I went through the entire novel with a fine-tooth comb. It's linked down below, so feel free to pause this video and go check it out if you'd like. But in short, The Housemaid follows Millie, who's just gotten out of prison. Millie needs a job. Nina Winchester, a wealthy Long Island housewife, needs a live-in housemaid. So it seems like a match made in heaven. But as soon as Millie accepts the job, the previously immaculately clean house and the kind and welcoming Nina are no more. As Millie deals with Nina's ever-changing mood and cruel manipulations, she gets closer and closer with Nina's husband, Andrew, who seems stuck in a marriage that's making him absolutely miserable. But everything is not as it seems, and Millie finds herself a pawn in a game of survival. A game she didn't technically sign up for, but one she might just be able to finish alive. So let's talk about how faithful the adaptation is to the source material. I felt that the movie was faithful to the book in a lot of ways, actually in most ways, while also straying away from it in the best ways. So what do I mean by that? The movie generally hits most of the plot points from the book. The Millie and Nina interview, Andrew's initial hesitation with having Millie in the house, Nina's nearly overnight personality switch and her continuous flipping and flopping and confusing the heck out of Millie with her behavior, and all of these requests that she keeps on making. All of that is there, and the sequences are pretty much lifted straight out of the book with very minimal to no changes. There's really nothing I can say about these specific scenes other than they worked in the book and they work just as well on the screen. Now, what I really want to dig into in this video is the changes that fix some of the issues I went over in the book review and just really make a lot of sense in terms of the movie-going experience, because it is very different consuming a story in a book version than going to see it visually on a big screen. So some adjustments have to be made, and I feel like the ones that were made worked amazingly well. So there are definitely depictions of violence in the book, but the movie turns it all the way up. Starting with Nina's kitchen outburst early in the movie when she accuses Millie of misplacing her PTA notes. I felt like in the book, Nina is simply being chaotic and accusatory toward Millie. Sure, Nina makes a huge mess, but things de-escalate and Nina maintains at least some of her composure by the end of this outburst. In the movie though, Nina, who's played by Amanda Seyfried, has a straight up mental episode. She's slamming drawers so hard that I was honestly afraid Amanda was going to get her finger stuck in one of them and get seriously hurt. Miss Seyfried, I hope no fingies were hurt in the making of this movie. Nina is screaming, she's frantic. Andrew, who's played by Brendan Sklenar, has to physically restrain Nina before she's able to get her aggression and panic under control. We get a lot more scary scenes down the line, but this outburst was actually pretty terrifying to see because it seemed to come completely out of the blue, and it's all thanks to Amanda Seyfried doing an amazing job, and also the writers choosing to fully lean into Nina appearing to have these psychotic breaks early in the movie, as opposed to just being a little messy, a little chaotic, a little aggressive. While some scenes from the book, such as Andrew forcing Nina to pepper spray herself in the face during one of the attic stints, don't make it into the movie, they're replaced by even more gruesome ones. For example, in the book, one of the mistakes Millie makes is read some of Andrew's books and not put them back on the shelf neatly. Andrew is a neat freak, he wants things how he wants them, so that's like a huge disaster for him. So after he locks Millie in the attic, he makes her stack these heavy books on her stomach and lay like that for 3 hours. In the book, we get descriptions of Millie being unable to breathe because the books are so heavy, and also of her having these bruises on her stomach from the books, which sounds bad, but it's also nothing compared to what happens to Millie in the movie. Because in the movie, we meet Andrew's mom early, and and she brings this set of expensive china that apparently means a lot to Andrew. It's like a family heirloom essentially. Later in the movie, Millie is making Andrew breakfast. She gets spooked by Enzo, who's standing in the doorway. She drops one of the plates and breaks it. So Millie's first ever punishment is not book related in the movie. Instead, movie Andrew is just as into counting as book Andrew apparently. He gives Millie a task to make 21 cuts in her stomach using one of the sharp broken plate bits. It's bloody, it's gory. I was honestly watching the scene like this, like through my fingers, and I was also thinking, I don't think she has enough space on her stomach area for the 21 long gashes that Andrew is requesting. And also, isn't she going to bleed out unless Andrew takes her to the hospital? It was just a literal bloody mess. She doesn't bleed out, thank goodness, and he doesn't take her to the hospital, obviously, but this change works so much better for the movie visually, because while the book punishment seemed definitely bizarre and just straight up evil in its own right, it probably wouldn't have made me and the other people at the screening have such a visceral reaction the way the plate punishment did. The teeth pulling scene is there, though Andrew gets away with pulling out just one tooth, but his actual death ends up being much more bloody and violent in the movie than it was in the book. Again, I think a lot of these changes have to do with the fact that we're going from one medium to another, and sometimes you just need to, gore things up a bit for the big screen to really make an impact on the viewer. I already mentioned one of the visual elements the movie gives us, aka the plates, but there are actually two more I want to point out because I thought that they worked beautifully on the screen. One of them is Cecilia's dollhouse that is a direct replica of the house the Winchesters live in. I feel like dolls and dollhouses are sort of a staple in horror movies and even in TV shows such as Pretty Little Liars, which I've talked about a bunch on my ASMR channel, and I'm also considering making some videos for this channel as well. I feel like the dollhouse is a fun addition to the Housemaid because it's not just there to add some, extra creepiness, but it's actually used as a storytelling device in and of itself. A good example of that is how Cecilia moves the dolls that are sitting at the miniature dinner table within the dollhouse. At first, Cecilia, Nina, and Andrew dolls are all sitting at the table. At another point in the movie, the Nina doll is gone. I can't remember if Cecilia puts her up in the attic or if it's just not at the table anymore, but the insinuation is that when bad things happen, her mother is taken away. I also wanted to mention the teeth, more specifically Andrew's smile. He's said to have a very charming smile, which Brendan Sklenar definitely does. He even brings it up himself during a scene where he's in the bathroom with Millie. His smile is a big deal, you guys. The big reveal at the end of the book is that Evelyn Winchester, Andrew's uptight, critical of literally everything mother, put Andrew through these sick punishments as a kid. We're supposed to gather that these traumatic experiences and his mother's sick need for everything to be perfect shaped Andrew and influenced him to expect the same perfection from the women in his life. Or maybe it's just that he imagined punishing his mother when he was punishing the women. I guess that's up for a debate, but what's not is that Andrew's mom always expected him to take care of his teeth and have this perfect smile, something Millie remembers at the end of the movie, which gives her the idea for a punishment of her own, to make Andrew pull out his front tooth with pliers. We get that in the movie as well, but what I liked in how the movie handled it is that there are multiple callbacks to Andrew's smile. So by the time Millie grabs those pliers from the drawer, you know exactly what she's going to make him do. Her punishment also seems more thought out and personal. Andrew's smile is what these stuck-up PTA moms admire about him. It's the feature that partly drew Millie to Andrew and got her into this mess in the first place. So ruining it feels like poetic justice because Millie is essentially taking away some of Andrew's power. Okay, let's talk about Cecilia. So Cecilia is a lot more bratty in the book, at times taking on the same act as Nina does, meaning telling Millie one thing and trying to gaslight Millie into thinking that she got something wrong when she actually didn't. There's definitely a bit of that in the movie, but I actually liked the changes to Cecilia's character. First of all, she seems much more aware of what's happening between her mother and Andrew. I feel like she definitely was aware to an extent in the book, but I feel like it's so much clearer showed in the movie. That's also clear when Millie finds her little Smurf figurine in Cecilia's dollhouse. It's a little figurine that she keeps in her car, and then she put it in her bedroom and tells Cecilia not to go through her stuff in the attic. And then Cecilia says that Millie shouldn't really be in the attic either. And it's kind of an ominous moment between the two. Obviously, Millie doesn't understand that it's a warning, because at that point, Andrew is the perfect, compassionate man with a, again, winning smile who can do no wrong. But looking back, it definitely is supposed to be a warning. The actress who plays Cecilia really nails this deadpan delivery, and a child who's seen a lot and has grown up way too fast but has to play along demeanor. So once Andrew throws Nina out of the house and she's essentially free, you can see the weight fall off of Cecilia when the two of them reconnect at the camp, because Cecilia realizes that she and her mother might finally be free of Andrew and his sick ways. But what I love the most is how Cecilia, who didn't seem to be that warm to Millie, like she was nice, I guess, but definitely very reserved, to be the one to convince Nina to go back to the house and get Millie the hell out of there before Andrew puts her through what he'd been putting Nina through for years. Yes, this inevitably ends up taking screen time away from Enzo, but it also works magic on making Nina's overall motivation behind helping Millie so much clearer than it was in the book. Speaking of motivations, a twisty plot is so much fun, but as a reader and a moviegoer, I need my characters to do things for reasons that make sense. They can make all the mistakes and take all the side quests that they want, so long as I understand exactly what's driving them to make the decisions that they're making. If you watched my book deep dive, you know that I touched on Millie being reckless when she decides to have sex with Andrew. They definitely have sex in the movie, and there's plenty of bedroom scenes to show for it, so if you're a fan of Sydney Sweeney or Brendan Sklenar and you want to see that happening, this is the movie for you. But what they do is, instead of simply having Millie and Andrew get drunk after the Broadway show, start making out in the cab, and then finish what they started at the hotel, in the movie they end up getting separate rooms, which shows some restraint. The sexy times don't happen until Nina sends Millie a million texts threatening to fire her, which actually Nina does multiple times in the movie. Millie runs into Andrew's room, panicked because she really can't afford to lose this job. Andrew comforting Millie leads into the sexy times. Not that cheating is good under any circumstances, whether the spouse is unbearable or not, but what the movie does is make the lead up a bit more, I don't know, graceful and seamless, I guess. No matter how morally gray your main character might be, you likely still want the audience to side with them, which I feel like I did to an extent reading the book, but there were some scenes, like the scene where Andrew kicks Nina out of the house, and Millie, who Nina now knows is the other woman, is basically twiddling her thumbs and offering to pack up Nina's stuff. Yeah, we don't love Nina at this point in the book, but the comment still comes off as kind of cold and harsh. The issue is actually fixed expertly in the movie by reworking the supermarket scene. In the book, Nina sends Millie to the supermarket, then makes an anonymous call to the security to accuse Millie of stealing. Millie is then hauled off to the office and her bags are searched, only for the security guard to confirm that she in fact has not stolen anything, and to let Millie go. It's a way to humiliate Millie and to give her a scare, because any little infraction could land Millie back in jail. But that's all that Nina's stunt does in the book. It embarrasses and scares Millie and is like, hey, I know about the affair. In the movie, Nina makes Millie drive her car to the supermarket because apparently their housemaid driving this beat up car that smells is giving Nina a bad name in the neighborhood. Only when Millie is leaving the supermarket, she gets stopped by cops, violently pushed against the car and handcuffed because, get this, Nina accused Millie of stealing the car, which is absolutely not what happened. Also, like the little detail of Andrew looking chummy with the cops. It's not talked about much in the actual movie, but in the book we do learn that the Winchester family is pretty influential and that Andrew has connections pretty much everywhere, which is one of the reasons why it's impossible for Nina to either get help or to leave, because nobody is going to believe that he's indeed the bad guy. Anyway, naturally, Andrew loses his mind because he was literally there at the table when Nina gave Millie the car keys. He also has a chance to do what he loves to do the most. He comes in running and saves Millie like the hero he constantly wants to be seen has. So when we get to the scene where Andrew is throwing Nina out, both Andrew and Millie being fed up with Nina makes complete sense. Andrew can't deal with her antics anymore, and as for Millie, Nina almost getting her arrested is the tipping point. It legitimizes the anger and the animosity Millie feels towards Nina, and suddenly sleeping with her husband and not caring that she's being thrown out of her house seems like what Nina deserves. So Millie's behavior, by definition, is almost excused. I feel like the author was very close to nailing the character motivations in the end of the novel, but the movie and the small changes that were made took it over the finish line for me. So aside from a few other changes, such as giving a longer montage of Millie and Andrew being all lovey-dovey and domestic together, Andrew's death scene is probably one of the biggest changes from the book to the movie. After Cecilia makes Nina feel bad for putting Millie in danger, Nina gets back to the house with one goal: to get Millie out of there. But when she gets into the house, gets up to the attic, and unlocks the door, she doesn't find a decomposed body like she does in the book. Nope, Andrew is still very much alive. After Millie stabbing him in the neck with a knife and leaving him without food and water for days, he's angry as a skunk and he shoots out that door, knocks Nina down, and goes on a rampage looking for Millie. When he realizes that Millie has gotten away, supposedly, he actually tries to apologize to Nina and to reconcile, which is absolutely diabolical. Of course, he prefaces it by saying that Nina can't do any better and she's pretty much won the lottery the day he saved her, so it's not much of an apology at all. But I guess that's Andrew's way of being vulnerable or something. I don't know. Honestly, Andrew's monologue at this point in the movie was one of the things I probably could have done without. I felt like what he was saying was a bit too on the nose and it took me out of the movie a little bit. But the action does pick back up when Nina, in not so few words, rejects him, calls his mother a "see you next Tuesday," and Millie reappears and throws him right over the railing. He falls to his death. Then, just like in the book, Nina tells Millie to get out. Meanwhile, she calls the police and waits. In the book, the detective who shows up is a man. He's also the father of Kathleen, a woman Andrew was engaged to and traumatized before he got his claws into Nina. In the movie, however, we do get a bit of a gender flip because the officer is a woman, and it's actually her sister Kathy who was one of Andrew's victims. Despite the cut on Andrew's neck from the knife and the fact that he's missing a tooth, thanks to also Millie, not being exactly consistent with a fall, the officer feels like this is sweet justice for Andrew being a psychotic menace to women and decides that this was an accident after all. Even though the way Andrew dies is changed drastically in the movie, I personally think it was done because a movie needed an action and tension-packed climactic scene, and simply having Nina find his body in the attic wouldn't have packed the punch that you want a scene like that to have. Also, having Nina and Millie symbolically team up in the end to defeat Andrew when they've been in opposite camps this entire movie gives more of a girl power feeling. Also, I felt that it was parallel to the flashback scene where Millie kills the student for assaulting her best friend back in school. Her best friend wasn't thankful to Millie for saving her. In fact, she didn't take Millie's side at all, despite the fact that Millie ended up in jail basically for her. Yeah, she bashed the guy in the head with her full chest, which alludes to the fact that there definitely is some darkness in Millie as well, just as there is in Andrew, but still, some appreciation from the best friend would have probably gone a long way. At the end of the movie, Millie finally gets that when he not only is thankful to Millie for getting her hands dirty to save Nina and Cecilia by extension, but she's also willing to take the fall for what happened because she got Millie into this situation in the first place. Nina is free and makes decisions on her own terms, even if it's choosing to potentially go to jail. And Millie feels justified and appreciated, finally. So both women get exactly what they've wanted. So the casting. Whoever did the casting for this movie did a wonderful job, so thank you so much. Well done. I've liked Sydney Sweeney in most roles that I've seen her in, but I think she nails Millie. Her confusion when Nina starts acting up is on point. I was also pleasantly surprised by the comedic Millie moments that we get in the movie. She also so easily falls into her psycho persona and takes a page from Andrew's book, using his own jargon against it by, for example, promising to let him out of the attic, but not just yet. There are also some comedic moments that shouldn't be funny but are funny thanks to Sweeney's delivery and this deadpan expression that she has. I'm specifically talking about the scene where she's breaking Andrew's precious china on the other side of the attic door and he's just panicking and in shambles on the other side. In my book deep dive, I touched on how I needed Brendan Sklenar to really sell Andrew's switch. His change from this normal, cool, handsome, and caring man to cold, calculated, and sick in the head, but also calm at the same time. This had to be believable for the movie to really work. Movie Andrew definitely doesn't stay cool and collected the entire time. We do get some outbursts from him that I maybe didn't pick up on when I was reading the book as much, but I feel like it all worked in the context of what was happening in those scenes. Overall, I feel like Sklenar did the character justice, and he seemed genuinely threatening, which is exactly what you want once the pieces start falling into place and you're like, wait, Nina is not the bad one after all. Overall, I think that Sklenar was a good pick for Andrew because first of all, he's so good looking and his voice is just so manly and pleasant that it goes through you like water. People were literally commenting on his voice in the little movie theater. So when the PTA moms are gushing over him and Millie immediately gets a crush on him, it definitely checks out because you're like, yeah, he's the man, he's the one. Amanda Seyfried was a more playful Nina than I guess I was imagining Nina when I was reading the book, but her dark scenes packed more of a punch than they did in the book, so it worked well on the screen. And then when Nina escapes Andrew and is in the hotel and we see her true personality come out, her facial expressions and glimpses of humor we see when she's still in her beige wearing pretending to be perfect for Andrew era makes so much more sense. This one is for the makeup and the wardrobe department, but I think it's such a nice touch. So thankfully the movie does without the fat shaming that happens in the book, so that's definitely a change I totally approve of. That being said, when we first meet Nina, she is perfect and polished, but as the movie progresses, so do the changes in Nina's appearance. It's very subtle at first, but over time you can notice her hair becoming more and more frizzy, her eyeliner is more and more smudged, until she comes back from dropping Cecilia off at camp, with makeup not so much put on or like beauty blended on her face, but literally smeared all over her face. She looks like she fell in the mud. I actually would have liked to have seen Millie and Andrew have a bit of a bigger reaction to Nina's appearance in that scene, but I guess the movie shows Nina getting more and more unhinged through the hair and the makeup changes, rather than, for example, showing Nina leave bloody tampons all over the place, and that's a change that I'm all for, to be honest, because I feel like we don't need to see that. Enzo was good with what he was given, but while I'm happy that they took out the scene where Nina and Enzo sleep together, because in the book it definitely comes out of the blue and seems kind of out of place, but I definitely wanted to see more of Enzo and did not really get that. I really hope we get sequels because then he'll get his moment to shine. So, between the twisted and tension-packed scenes that came straight out of the pages of the book and the changes that fixed some of the narrative and motivation issues I ran into while reading, The Housemaid is one of my favorite book-to-movie adaptations I've seen, honestly, probably over the last few years. I feel like it's faithful enough to where the fans of the book will love it, but at the same time, the changes that are made kept me, someone who knew exactly where the story was supposed to be heading, on my toes, thinking, wait, this wasn't in the book, what is going to happen next? The Andrew monologue at the end felt a bit clumsy, but other than that, The Housemaid hits all the storytelling marks. The cast was great, and since my mom is a big fan of the book and will definitely want to see the movie when it comes out in the theaters, I'll definitely be watching it again. So what are your thoughts on The Housemaid as an adaptation? Did the movie do the book justice, or are there any changes that you would make? Let me know in the comments down below, and make sure to subscribe so you never miss a new upload. Speaking of, I'm actually working on something a little bit lighter for my next book source material deep dive. Hint hint, the movie adaptation for this book is hitting Netflix in early January, so definitely stay tuned for that. Thank you for spending some time with me, have a good one, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.